do stuff like that, bro. It started out.
A safe space to talk about wellness and anything else that might be on the mind.
You don't know how bad I used to hate my back.
Total Care Tuesday is a once-a-week workshop at Youth Action Youth Build. Located in East Harlem, the organisation runs a programme for young people aged 17 to 24. Over 9 months, students can receive vocational training, work towards obtaining a high school equivalency diploma, and participate in community service and leadership projects. Karim Kouzer is a former student and now works for the organisation. He says he felt more like a number than an individual at school and believes that this programme can help with those feelings of isolation.
You could be influential in that you could build valuable job skills, the soft and hard skills that's needed to work on a job site, all while helping out other people. So it's important just for us to bring back a more familial and communal aspect to our communities that's been missing due to everybody taking an individual path or maybe giving up because they haven't gotten the first chance.
Medical experts say loneliness is a nationwide problem. The US Surgeon General calls it a public health epidemic. In an 81-page report, the Surgeon General's office warns that loneliness can raise the risk of premature death by roughly 30%. Health studies here in New York reveal that more than half of the city's residents feel lonely often, or at least some of the time. Loneliness impacts millions of Americans. Health experts say it can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and can elevate the risk of depression, dementia, and anxiety. Surveys suggest young people and lower-income people are most impacted by an issue significantly exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And experts believe that social media has contributed to this epidemic of loneliness. Some say loneliness can translate to suicidal thoughts or acts of extreme violence.
Not just school shooters, but kids out there in the streets and in the neighborhoods. And every kid I've ever worked with all have the same profile. They're invisible, or they perceive themselves as being invisible.
Huddle Up is a program that provides mental wellness games and techniques and promotes relationship building in the classroom.
Getting these kids together, connected, sensing and feeling each other, but being able to touch each other, whether it be in the palm of their hand or on the tap on their backs, or all appropriate stuff, but at least having somebody touch you and know that they know that you're alive.
Sora Schools provides an online learning option for middle and high school age students. Its advocates say dated, traditional classroom teaching methods can compound feelings of isolation.
Even though we're a fundamentally online program, students are still in their learning expeditions having rigorous debate. They're discussing issues, they're going into breakout rooms, they're talking for the majority of the time. So even though, yes, it's online, they're exercising their social muscles far more than the average student.
New York State recently held its first ever Youth Mental Health Summit. Recommendations include greater resources for recreation and wellness, training on social media, and increased mental health resources.
If you look at the statistics, they're absolutely staggering. And it's just a reminder that we're failing our children. According to the CDC, 42%, almost half of all high school students feel persistently sad or hopeless at what could be one of the most spectacular times of their lives.
Faced with an urgent health crisis, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul says the era of underinvesting in mental health is over. Healthcare professionals are calling on schools, families, and workplaces to step up and break down barriers to human connection.
I was medically discharged from the military due to an incident. That's when the loneliness really started to hit home. Coming from the military and it being such a tight-knit family, and then all of a sudden it's gone. There were a couple of times where I did consider taking my own life, and that was because of loneliness, depression. I was living by myself and I was alone with my thoughts.
Chris Cooper's experience is not unusual. The social isolation following the loss of a job or loved one is one of the many causes of loneliness. 4,000 Australians were questioned by the advocacy group Ending Loneliness Together.
Loneliness affects everyone, but what we did find was higher trends in 18 to 24-year-olds, but also 45 to 54-year-olds. And as you know, both of these age groups are well embedded within our society.
The latest figures paint a disturbing picture about the impact of loneliness on everyday Australians. Nearly 1 in 3 Australians feel lonely, many unable to talk about it because of the perceived stigma. This means that the lonely are often reluctant to seek help.
Hello, this is Lifeline.
By the time they summon the courage to ring charities like Lifeline, they are desperate for someone with whom to share their worries.
We do get a lot of people who feel very alone and are very socially disconnected, and especially since people have been working from home and experiencing a lot more isolation, a lot more lack of social connection.
Often those who ring face seemingly insurmountable family or relationship problems which contribute to their loneliness, though in truth there are countless factors involved.
The fact that people are working longer hours in response often to cost of living pressures, and associated things like volunteering less. If you're working more, you have less time to engage in those types of activities. But also, and this one's a little bit more contentious, but there's discussion around social media and the fact that we engage a lot with social media rather than directly with other people.
A more worrying trend is the mortality rate suffered by the lonely.
I think research is showing us that loneliness is on scale with the other big factors that lead to mortality. So on par with things like smoking or other kind of bad health behaviors, we see that folks who are lonely are actually at higher risk of dying.
The good news is that loneliness is increasingly recognised as a major social issue. But Michelle Lim believes governments and health authorities still need to do more.
So I think one thing that we could do is really think about a holistic solution. Loneliness is a wicked problem. It is difficult to resolve. It requires what we call a whole of government and whole of systems approach.
And as Chris Cooper has found, the right backup is crucial.
Through my professional support and me as a person opening up has made me so happy. I'm in such a great state of mind now compared to what I was when I left.
It's been a long and difficult journey since Chris left the Navy. But thanks to the support he's received, he's now studying psychology at university and has overcome the sense of isolation that once overshadowed his life.
It's black. It's no vision. I don't see anything in the future.
Abdul Rahman Latouf survived a pair of devastating earthquakes that tore through southern Turkey earlier this year. He spent months living in a makeshift camp amongst the rubble. He says he's trying to stay strong for his family, but it's a heavy burden to bear for the Syrian national who previously fled to Turkey to escape a bloody civil war. Surviving a series of crises has taken a toll on the father of 5.
Everything is changed because we was living in house. Right now you see where we live, and we live in this tent. It's so hard, in the rain hard, in the sunny day hard. It's don't work.
Regardless of where in the world tragedy occurs, there is often a similar pattern that can emerge. Rescue operations switch to recovery. The urgency and adrenaline abate. And residents in affected areas are left with the daunting and often very lonely task of picking up the pieces of their lives. Months after the earthquakes, CNA returned to the region to meet those still trying to recover. They told us just how isolating the experience of rebuilding can be. Muni Yassin, another Syrian refugee, also lost her new home in Turkey. The emotional anguish clearly visible.
بس كتير صعب والعيش صعب كتير والله ما بعرف ما عم نعرف وين بدنا نروح وين بدنا نجي ما عم نعرف كل ما نتخيل بدنا نروح مثلا نستأجر ما فينا إمكانية نستأجر ما ضل في بيوت الآجار ما بعرف مصيرنا لوين بدي نروح ما حدا بيعرف.
Another country, another community ripped apart by disaster. This is the village of Ahrweiler in northwest Germany. In July 2021, it found itself ground zero for the worst natural disaster to hit Germany in decades. Almost 200 people died nationwide when torrential rain caused flash flooding and swept through towns and villages with very little warning. 2 years have now passed since what the Germans call Hochwasser or high water hit this town. Families and businesses are still trying to bounce back. When we first reported here 2 years ago, the sheer scale of the destruction meant it was very difficult to imagine how this town would get back on its feet. Slowly but surely, though, it is. The rescue vehicles have been replaced by a convoy of construction firms working to repair the physical damage. But for the people of Ahrweiler, recovering from the emotional impact of this disaster, well, that will likely take a little bit more time. On the night of the deluge, the ferocity of the surging floodwaters meant there was simply no time for many to save their belongings. Wolfgang Huster owns an antique and rare bookstore on the town's main street. He lost everything that night and has spent the last 2 years painstakingly trying, quite literally, to replace what was lost.
To this part we had water, it was destroyed. Everything was destroyed.
He says throwing himself back into his work has acted as a distraction. But while visiting countless markets and auctions to restock his store has helped the recovery process, it's clear the memories of that night have taken an emotional toll on him.
I was very depressed, of course. First I thought, don't start again. You are now in the age of 68 and other people go in rent. They don't work anymore, but I must work because I get only a little bit money from the state, and I will do it once more 5 or 6 years.
Wolfgang says it was the kindness of family and friends and even some strangers who came to assist that helped him break the cycle of loneliness.
It was a struggle with myself and with nature and with this whole situation. I was very depressed, but I feel like a struggler. I said, no, you can't stop. You must do it. That's life. We had sometimes between 25 and 35 young people who helped us 8 or 10 hours each day, and that was a big help for us.
While foot traffic in this once busy tourist town has fallen in the wake of the floods, local businesses have banded together to push a new We Are Open campaign to encourage visitors to return. And while seeing tourists again would have an economic benefit for the town, there's also the simple psychological impact of seeing bustling crowds in these streets once more and the human connection that would come with it. And that's a sentiment many survivors and victims of natural disasters share, that in the wake of such devastation, knowing that they won't be forgotten can help with the healing process. A powerful message that politicians have also tried to express in their post-disaster statements.
In the coming weeks and months and years, we will continue to work together. We will make sure that the pledges are fully delivered and on time. And we will make sure that our investment has the strongest impact on the ground in full transparency and accountability. Thank you very much for showing the people of Syria and Turkey that they are not alone. We care and we are here to help.
It's one thing to survive a natural disaster, but the road to recovery can be long and arduous. While towns and cities can be rebuilt, for those living there, the emotional scars can last a lifetime. And while governments can provide some support, it's ultimately a sense of community that can truly help lift people up in their hour of need. Small gestures like lending a hand, checking in on a neighbour, or offering to cook a hot meal all add up. Using the power of humanity to help prevent people feeling lonely and left behind.
Es duro. Es duro tener esos hijos que tú te paras en la mañana y pasarle la mano a tus hijos y que no te... Para mí eso es lo peor que hay. Ojo cuando tú quieres a tus hijos.
Grief means deep sorrow, and that is exactly what 64-year-old Ana Ramirez feels every day. 4 years ago, one of her daughters left Venezuela, driven by the country's prolonged economic crisis, and headed to the United States. A year later, her second daughter migrated to Chile. They took Ana's 3 grandchildren with them. Then last year, Ana's only son died unexpectedly. Ana says migration and death took her children away. Only her husband remains in Venezuela and one daughter who is living with a psychological disability.
Me siento sola. Sola y triste, pues, porque no las tengo.
Every day, she faces deep mourning while she tries to make ends meet. Her meager pension is not enough to buy food and medicine, so she works as a seamstress in the Petare slum to earn extra income. Like Ana, millions of Venezuelan families have been separated in recent years. More than 7 million people have fled the country in hopes of a better life. A recent survey conducted by a private Venezuelan university found that 7 in 10 people have lost a family member due to migration, and a third of the Venezuelan population has been psychologically affected by the exodus.
This is unprecedented in a country that is not facing war, but where its citizens have been hit hard by a prolonged crisis. Migration is taking a toll on their mental health, and both those who have left and those who have decided to stay are suffering the consequences of families torn apart.
The most affected sector of the population are females over the age of 65. Often, elderly women remain in Venezuela while their relatives go overseas in search of new opportunities. Forced migration also emotionally affects children who are left in the care of other relatives. At this grief support program in Caracas, a group of 20 psychologists offer virtual and in-person consultations to Venezuelans struggling with anxiety, stress, and sense of loss. In 2017, they started to provide psychological support. So far, 35,000 Venezuelans have received help. Most patients here have been either being left behind by loved ones or migrated and are calling in from overseas.
Tenemos un duelo migratorio que se da en dos espacios y en dos niveles distintos. El que se va con una situación de estrés muy difícil porque está, insisto, en una situación infrahumana en muchos casos, y el que se queda porque está en un duelo rodeado de incertidumbre.
69-year-old Gladys Lopez is all too familiar with that uncertainty, but she has found some solace in her religion. She lives all alone. Her 3 children have all migrated. One is living in Spain, another one in Portugal, and the youngest in Uruguay. Her 2 grandchildren also left with them. Last year, her husband also left Venezuela for Spain to seek better treatment for his diabetes. The rooms and corridors of her home, which used to be filled with family members, are now quiet and empty.
Yo lloro a veces de noche, solita, lloro, Señor, ayúdame porque no quiero estar triste, pues, ¿verdad? Es que hace falta, mamita, la familia, el esposo.
While she's relatively good health now, Gladys says her biggest desire is to be reunited with her family again before she died. That's not possible, at least for now. But in the meantime, she treasures every memory from the family she used to have.